Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, it looks like the crisis in Ukraine has subsided. The Russians, who had been conducting exercises close to the Ukrainian border, have been ordered back to their barracks and to where they had been stationed. And clearly, Zelensky is talking now about holding a bipartite meeting with President Putin, and no one is really talking about any great armed conflict in the near future. So it's clear that the critical events that took place during this crisis, which were triggered by the Ukraine's threatening behavior, by having moved its forces on the line of contact in the Donbass, were his meetings with President Macron of France, Chancellor Merkel, Germany, and they made clear to him that he has to deal with his breakaway republic, so to speak, according to the Minsk Accords, and that he cannot try to resolve the crisis by force and then expect NATO to come and bail him out. In other words, that scenario whereby he triggers a crisis, Russia intervenes, and then NATO comes in to help him out, it just ain't gonna happen. And it's clear that also that the Biden administration, in making its very pointed reversal on deploying 2 warships in the Black Sea, also played a part in Zelensky's calculations. I mean, the Biden people were the ones who were the most gung-ho, egging him on, encouraging him, we're right behind you, sovereignty, territorial integrity, we're with you 1000%. And then they reverse and say, well, maybe it's not such a great idea to provoke Russia in the Black Sea. So faced with all of this, Zelensky knows he's on his own against Russia. NATO's not going to come and help him out. Why? If he's been in power for a long time, why it's taken him so long to figure that one out? We know the history of NATO. NATO's very good at big talk, but when it comes down to it, it's always missing in action. So President Putin was asked yesterday about, hey, what about this meeting with Zelensky? And he said, well, Ukraine's been taking these very, very unfriendly acts towards us, on the issue of the Russian language, on the issue of the Orthodox Church. If he wants to discuss the crisis in Ukraine, he needs to discuss it with the leaders of the breakaway republics. Once those discussions are underway, we can certainly help out to mediate. If, however, he wants to discuss improvement of relations between Russia and Ukraine, then my door is open to him. So in other words, it's clear, I'm not going to discuss the Ukraine crisis with Zelensky, but if he wants to improve relations between Russia and Ukraine, hey, I'm ready to do it. All right, Peter, what's your take?
Well, what's not reported in the media is that Zelensky has hit a brick wall in just about every sense of the word in Ukrainian politics. Corruption has not changed. Economic growth is not there. They have a dismal reaction to COVID, which the West is in partly or maybe entirely to blame for that. The Russians offered the Sputnik V vaccine. And what we know, the Western ambassadors in Kiev, which really kind of control the country, said no. So almost on every single level, he has hit a brick wall. And the political forces that are most active and actually know what they want most is the radical nationalists, okay? And so he's trying to appease them. He's trying, because what is it? Zelensky's like at 21, 22, 25% popularity right now, which is a huge caved from what he had when he came into power. I mean, he won the Rada, the parliament. I mean, he had everything,
Right.
except for he will not take on the oligarchs, which is the problem with Ukrainian politics. Okay, it's an oligarchy there. So what Zelensky tried to do was to internationalize it. And he knows he plays upon the hateful vengeance and small-mindedness of the Atlantic Council and all of these other people that are just revved up, because it's a grift, okay? As long as you don't go to war, okay? But let's be clear, everyone. There are people in the Beltway and the political establishment that would love to have a war with Russia, as long as it's Ukraine and Russia. Okay, that's what they want. They're not going to send American troops there, though there are generals are gung ho enough to do it. Okay, but as a policy decision, that's not in the cards. So really, what Zelensky threw the dice and he got snake eyes again. Okay, but what happens here? You mentioned quite correctly that the exercises, which is an annual event, everyone. It's not out of the ordinary. Western media gets that wrong too. You have a hostile country on your border. You have to be prepared, okay? And that's what you do. You have exercises. This is not hard stuff to understand. But Zelensky is very interesting, is that he ordered a mobilization. There was a Ukrainian troop movement towards the line of contact where the Donbass is. But the difference is that, sure, they may withdraw their troops, but not their equipment, because they're going to do this again. Okay, so they're fortifying the border, or what could be called a border is de facto a border, and so this is not over. They're getting, as I keep saying, this is like a roulette wheel. You pick your number, you turn the wheel, and you just hope, is it my number? No, okay, we're going to try it again. We're going to try it again. Zelensky, for all the failure of this, he did get some traction. Okay. I mean, there was an interest. There was a lot of rhetorical backing. NATO is salivating because it proves that they should exist in all of this. And what they did also is they tested Russia's resolve. I mean, there's a lot of layers here. And this is far from over. It's far from over because Ukraine will not concede. This is an intra-Ukrainian conflict.
Right.
And those,
I agree. I mean, it's far from over because there's still this movement, particularly by the Atlanticists, particularly strong in Washington, who want to get Ukraine into NATO. For them, a Ukrainian offensive and a defeat for Ukraine wasn't a bad outcome. Okay, Ukraine loses the Donbass, but then Ukraine's in NATO, because then the resistance to NATO membership disappears. They say, well, we need Ukraine because we need to preserve Ukraine, and the conflict on its borders will then come to an end, which is the condition for NATO membership. They say, well, it's a homogeneous country, no territorial disputes within the country, therefore eligible for membership. So that impetus is still there. And so I agree with you that it's likely to bubble up on the surface. It's just that, as you said, Zelensky is pretty much, he's out of options. He talks to Macron, he talks to Merkel, he talks to Erdogan. He blusters about a meeting with Putin. He's all out of options now.
But if we take your scenario to the extreme, which I think is a very good one, is that NATO would become eligible for NATO membership. But George, what kind of Ukraine would that be? Would it be a rump state? Right. Politically speaking, let's say that scenario plays out. Who's the biggest loser politically? Zelensky. He'll be on a helicopter out because he will be the one that lost Ukraine. Okay. There's going to be no sympathy for him. If he wants to get an oversized uniform and go up to the line of contact and parade around for the cameraman with Western journalists and all of that, okay. That's in the internet. That's going to last forever, okay? And he'll be, he was the guy. And his political opponents in Ukraine say, he's the one that did it, okay? See, we're looking at it, he's always been a novice. I think he had good intentions when he came to power. And on Crosstalk, we were very much in support of him. but he's proven not to have the leadership skill, and plus he's addicted to the Atlanticist rhetoric. Okay, what is this rhetoric? These are the kind of people that piss on your leg and say it's raining. Okay, I mean, because these people, because at no cost for them, believe this narrative. And then they'll say, "Oh well, Zelensky, sorry, it didn't work out." I mean, maybe we'd get you, a job at the, at the Atlantic Council. Maybe you could be an advisor or something like that. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. All right. But see, Ukraine will be changed forever. And as you and I have said previously on the Gaggle, if there were to be a major military conflict, the Russians are going to demand their pound of flesh for you guys starting this thing.
Well, no, that's right. I think there's no question. They would certainly take at least the Donbass and probably something more. They probably, because they would need some kind of a demilitarized zone, and that would be that. I mean, that's it. It's gone forever as far as Ukraine is concerned. But for the NATO crowd, they think it's a pretty good outcome because they need some rationale to keep NATO going. I mean, after all, they did that reckless thing in 2008 in Bucharest in promising NATO membership to Ukraine and Georgia, knowing full well that this is bound to provoke a crisis, which it immediately did in Georgia, but then, a few years later in Ukraine. But they don't really care. They think, hey, it's a boon for us. We win because now we can whip up the hysteria over Russia. And as we were talking about a moment ago, there's one of these ridiculous articles in the Economist today, which you Peter, believe is written by Ed Lucas. I don't know. It's an unsigned editorial.
If he's still writing, it's very likely that he did. Right. But on the record, I don't know for a fact because the Economist does not have bylines.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And it has spreads the whole usual palaver about Russia, but ultimately it comes to this very insipid conclusion. Well, we got to sort of be tough with Russia, but we don't want to get into a war with them. Okay, well, okay, so what's the point of coming out with these, frothing at the mouth editorials if all you're going to do is in the end is say, yeah, well, we don't want to get into a fight with them. So why encourage people to get into fights with Russia if the end result is always going to be the same? We're not going to do it. And by the way, and this brings up the whole issue of Navalny, which the Economist goes on and on and on about, and every other Western leader goes on about in an absolutely ridiculous fashion, which is completely meaningless because the West doesn't have any say in the matter. It's an internal Russian matter. So it's the waste energy, waste oxygen on this issue is just a height of childishness.
In the article that you're making reference to, this is another typical propaganda ploy to focus it on an individual, a good one and a bad one. Okay, the tyrant and the freedom fighter. Okay, we can see this all over the world. We've seen it for decades and decades. You find these individuals and you elevate them. You don't really give much detail about them. These people are complex. Navalny has a very long history of being a chauvinist, a nationalist, a racist, but that doesn't matter because he's in juxtaposition to the evil guy, okay? They do it all the time. It's Saddam, let's get rid of Saddam. Let's get rid of Milosevic. Let's get rid of Gaddafi. And, it's always searching for the new Hitler. That's what it is. It's always the new Hitler, all right? But what this exercise has done, sure, people are, patting themselves on their back. This propaganda ploy worked. Everyone knows about it. There's sympathy for Ukraine. Ukraine is critical to Western national security. It's never explained why. Okay, whatsoever. Oh, it's never explained why. Is that after all of the prodding and demanding, threatening Ukraine to reorient itself to the West, Russia is still its biggest trading partner. What is the EU? I mean, where's that vibrant EU-Ukraine trade relationship? Oh, it doesn't exist, does it? No, they don't want anything that Ukraine makes, okay? And you have this constant drain. I mean, Ukraine's demographics is a mess, okay? Because their biggest export are people. So, I mean, again, this is, it's in these think tank boardrooms, and they're moving little things on a blackboard, and the outcome is you've damaged Ukraine even more, set back if there was even a possibility of some kind of stability in the Russian-Ukraine relationship. I mean, what this does, this Atlanticist approach is to poison everything, make it as worse as possible, just that we're afraid to fight. Well, don't, you guys fight it out, okay? I mean, it's but again, we on this podcast, we stress over and over again, NATO is constantly, fervently looking for a reason to exist. And what this whole thing did is that it's constantly trying to keep the alliance together, because there's a lot of people in all through Europe, Western Europe, saying, well, what are we doing in Ukraine? What's this Ukraine thing?
Well, I think that's right, and then that's yeah, when they say about Crimea, then this is some huge Western interest. To most people, I've always assumed that Crimea was part of Russia. I mean, it's kind of news to anyone that Crimea is not part of Russia. Well, I was like, isn't that Chekhov used to go there? Wasn't there a Crimean War? There wasn't. Didn't Britain, England, and France
the number of people
Russia over Crimea? I remember what they learned in school. When they were 12.
I've been living here for over 20 years, and that geographical mistake is the most common. Peter, I really want to visit Russia. I want to go to Crimea. Okay, this was before 2014. Yeah. People simply don't know that. But what's really interesting, I mean, Congress is, again, but there's bipartisanship on Washington for the worst possible things. Right. Wars, arms expenditures, right. There's always bipartisan support.
That's right. They just voted out unanimously voted out some legislation from I think it's the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to send $300 million of military aid to Ukraine. Now, $300 million, that is a lot of money for a poor country like Ukraine. Of course, all of this these arms will just disappear very quickly. I mean, it's
like vapor.
Evaporate, yeah, exactly. That money will be gone. Hey, can we have some more now, please, Uncle Sam? So that that's done. But
and the weapons that do end up there will end up in the Donbass in a fortnight.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. But what I think is always troubling about these kinds of crises is that, of course, there's the Western spin machine, which will proclaim that, oh, Russia backed down because Biden showed force. And it's always kind of bizarre that because the Western media is so much in the tank with Biden, that they don't even pay attention. Well, Biden is so much tougher with Putin than Trump was. You say, well, it was Biden who withdrew the warship. He decided, well, I'm not going to send the warships into the Black Sea. It's Biden who is desperately trying.
No, George, that is rain on your leg. That's rain on your leg, George.
Yes. I mean, so that all of these things, just like it was Biden who gave up all of Trump's demands on the Russians for a renewal of the New START treaty. But again, the media pay no attention. Oh, Biden is so much tougher with Putin. What? Because he said something rude to Putin, called him a killer. I mean, that's how you judge things. Well, I guess yeah. I mean,
okay, right.
That's how they judge things. You say something rude to a Russian leader. Oh, wow, he's really doing a great job.
So, I mean, they're trying to explain to their audiences that Russia backed down because it's afraid of Ukraine. It's afraid of NATO. I mean, so if this is a malign regime that's bent on aggression, well, it gets scared pretty easy, doesn't it?
Very easily, yeah. Yes.
It's very strange. And they never really explain that. See, again, everything when it has to do with Russia is either Keystone Cops or James Bond. I don't care what issue it is that they're talking about. They try to have both those balls floating at the same time. Right. And it's ridiculous, okay? That's why, I mean, I've been doing a series of programs on Crosstalk. You and I incessantly talk about it, and you end up just kind of scratching your head. It's like, what are these people thinking about? You can't have these two propositions true right. at the same time. Russia is a major threat to the world, but it has an economy smaller than Italy. Its GDP is minuscule, but Russia is threatening to invade Europe. Okay, the United States, Russia's defense spending is 10% of NATO. And that's including the United States.
No, exactly. And
I mean, we could go on and on and on, okay?
GRU is the most formidable spy machine in the world, and yet they make the most basic espionage mistakes imaginable, like having the two spies traveling on the same.
They only have two secret agents.
Exactly. Okay? Petrov and Bashirov.
Just two.
The comedy duo. They're always Petrov and Bashirov.
But their comedy act is faking you out, George. See, this is it. This is like look. It's two mirrors reflecting into infinity. Okay. It can be, and it's fact free. You just inject what you want, okay? And in all of these ridiculous articles, the only thing that catches your eye is the headline, because the rest of it is that, unconfirmed, anonymous, believed to be, estimated, guesstimated. I mean, it's like, why did you write this article? Oh, you wrote it for the headline.
Right. No, exactly. You just, you mobilize the troops and everyone. Oh yeah. Biden was so tough with Russia, and then they just keep repeating. Maddow repeats it, and then the idiot who before her, Chris Hayes, he repeats it. The guy who comes after her, whatever his name is, and then Scarborough repeats it. Well, Biden is so different. He's so tough. Russia back down. What? And what? Back down after it was Biden himself who said, yeah, I don't think sending warships is such a great idea. After he makes these entreaties, please, can we have a summit as soon as possible, please?
Yeah. But see, what this proves is that who's the serious actor and who's the unserious actor.
Exactly.
Okay, Zelensky, I think it was on the 29th of March, don't quote me on this one, but he signed a presidential directive to retrieve Crimea and the republics of the Donbass, okay? And he mobilized the Ukrainian military. These are known facts, okay?
Right.
And so that was the action. Then there was a reaction during a time where there were annual exercises in the western part of Russia, which it has last time I checked, every sovereign country has a right to do what it wants to do inside its borders. And so those forces were beefed up because of the directives that were coming out of Ukraine. They take it, the Russian side takes it very seriously. I'll tell you why, folks. Up to 14,000 people have died in the conflict in the Donbass. And most of them identify as being Russian, certainly Russian speakers.
I think it's absolutely right. I think Russia has made clear, what every other country makes clear, it will not tolerate the killings of its own citizens. I mean, it's just, I mean, we talked about this before. It's the position that Turkey took over the Turkish Cypriot.
The U.S. invaded Grenada over 17 medical students.
Whatever it was, 17 or 16. Yeah, no, exactly. What India did about its own, the Bengalis in what's now Bangladesh, at that time was East Pakistan. In other words, that's what countries do. We will not tolerate any kind of a massacre of our countrymen, our nationals. That's Russia's position. Has been Russia's position all along. And the West may spin it. Oh, Russian aggression. Russia wants to invade Ukraine. That's not it. That's just that. We will protect our nationals. That's it.
Well, another thing this whole exercise, this ridiculous charade proved, is that the grift works, okay? All of the Atlanticist institutions and their propaganda arms, they were busy as bees, okay? And they're showing their value. And it shows the value that they can serve in service of power of these neocons, of these arms companies, and they will be generously rewarded. And they get the next campaign started, okay? And that's what they're doing right now. They're saying, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And they're going to try it again. It's obvious, okay?
Well, that's right. That 300 million that was voted out of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Well, there'll be, there's another batch, on the way, and it's like ordering drinks at a bar, but you already ordered the next one before you've even drunk this one. So that, you never want to be without a drink in your hands. So yeah, that's exactly the way.
This is an addiction, absolutely an addiction. So. We can end on this note too, is that the Russian side learned lessons about the ineptitude of the people they're dealing with, okay? They're dangerous, They have a very assertive rhetoric, but they're very inconsequential in their actions. Okay, that's a very odd opponent to deal with. Okay, because when you're in a geopolitical struggle, the most important thing is information. Okay, and these guys are all over the map. Okay, and Zelensky is sitting in Kiev with his tail between his legs. That's what you do to your clients. That's what clientism is.
That's right. One has to say, Zelensky is a very slow learner. I mean, he's been in that job now for a while. He doesn't seem to have learned a great deal. So, he may not be last for very much longer.
You would have thought he'd had a quick chat with Saakashvili.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. All right, Peter. We will, of course, be maintaining our customary laser-like focus on NATO and Ukraine. So in the meantime, please look us up on Rumble. We are now on Rumble. And if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.